Yes, friends, it is Fantasy in Frames Wednesdays. We got our core shows here at Fantasy in Frames kicking off tonight with Dynasty 365. I'm your host, Jorge Edwards. Got Aaron, Aiden. How you doing, man?
I'm great. I'm excited to talk about some skill play rookies, and I can't wait to dive into this class even more with you tonight.
Absolutely. So JT is running a little bit late, but he'll be joining us soon. So again, we're going to be talking about rookie wide receiver prospects and tight ends. So sit tight, and we'll be right back right after this. Aiden Weingarter, tell me, how have you been this week?
I've been great. So the other day we hit a month out from the 2025 NFL draft. We're just counting down the days at this point. I call it football Christmas for a reason because I'm very, very invested in it with different profiles from a Bills fan perspective, just anything around the league. I absolutely love it. So yeah, I'm sure our audience feels the same, and I can't wait to dive even more into this class as time goes on within the next few weeks.
Absolutely. And of course, folks, if you are joining us late or you have to listen to us via podcast, that's okay. If you listen on Apple or on Spotify, find the Dynasty 365 podcast. This episode will be in podcast form bright and early tomorrow morning, so you can listen to it wherever you listen to podcasts, whether it's on your way to work or just sitting at home or going to the gym or wherever. And of course, you can always head over to our YouTube channel and watch this episode as well, or rewatch it for those who are watching. And since you're there, why don't you hit that subscribe button and notification bell so that way you're notified when Fantasy in Frames puts out fantastic content here to help you have fun playing fantasy football, as well as prepare you to, win. Because, I hear winning is fun, right, Aiden?
Yeah, we all love that, don't we?
Yeah, Aiden, winning is pretty fun. And of course, tonight, folks, like I said, it's Fantasy in Frames Wednesdays. We got our show lineup, core lineup here, where we have us, Dynasty 365. Then we have Shoot the Gap with a very special guest, Dorian Davis, joining us, NFL draft prospect at defensive back. Can't wait to pick his brain. And of course, we got the guys in Fourth and Frames. No Rhett Manuel tonight, but Aiden, you'll be taking his place, so to speak, or filling in his shoes, or shaving your. Are you shaving your head? In the show?
I know that was a hot topic the other day. I declined the offer. I said no.
I don't blame you. To each their own, but I still don't blame you. Those guys are going to be talking about coaching changes in the NFL and how that impacts fantasy football players going forward this year and potentially beyond. And with that, and also don't forget to head over to fantasyandframes.com. Check out all of our recent articles. Aiden, you basically for the past 2 weeks have monopolized article content over at Fantasy and Frames. Just fantastic work. We got a bunch of other people starting out. Joe Harlow, one of our new writers here, and soon to be new podcasters. That's a spoiler alert. We'll talk a little bit about that later. I'll announce that tomorrow. But Joe Harlow will put together a series called Framing the Draft, where he talks about tierable players at certain positions, and he'll cover all the positions on offense and defense and tell you people who really stand out, people who have upside, and people that he's kind of weary about. And you just head over to fantasyandframes.com today, check out that article, let them know what you think, give them a follow across all the different social media platforms, and we're excited. This is a great day. This is a great yeah, it's just a great day to talk ball and just damn it, I'm so excited. I'm just getting flustered right here. So instead of stumbling and rambling for the next 10 minutes, Aiden, how about we just get into talking about some rookie receivers and tight ends? Again, we're talking rookie prospects. How's that sound like to you?
Well, let's be honest. Every day is a great day to talk about this. So
you're not wrong. You are not wrong. Okay, let's get into our first guy that we're going to talk about. Why don't you kick us off? Tell us about a wide receiver that people should be paying attention to heading in for fantasy football purposes for this year.
So I am this is one of my quote unquote brand guys, or my guys, if you will. That is Matthew Golden, wide receiver from Texas. I have some notes on here about some of his strengths and weaknesses, but at face value, Matthew Golden, again, wide receiver from Texas, his pure measurables, he's 5'11", 191, and Jorge, I don't know if you recall, but this guy ran a blazing 4.29 at the 40 at the combine just a few weeks ago. So that's just huge plus right there. Before I get into any strengths and weaknesses, do you have any surface level thoughts on Golden at all that you want to bring to the table before I dive deeper?
So one of the things, and I guess this is more of a generalization. I get it. There are things to take away from combine performances, things to take away from RAS scores and all the different advanced metrics that we talk about when it comes to the NFL Combine. How do I put this? I'm not saying I discount what you're seeing on Combine days, but I like to look at particularly just his film, just his performances, these players' performances on the field and what they show. Very rarely do you get wide receivers or just receivers in general who just run a straight line unless they're running go routes. They have to make moves all over the field. So I put a little bit more stock into game film. And there's JT.
Sorry, running late, fellas. Trying to get the kids food, and I was waiting on my to-go order for 40 minutes, man. Sorry, running in here. Sorry,
to Matthew
the
Golden.
show, guys.
No worries, man. We're talking about Matthew Golden. Before Aiden gets into some pros and cons here, anything that just jumps to your mind as far as Matthew Golden as a fantasy football, talent and or just a prospect in general?
Yeah, Golden's an interesting guy. Really nice at Houston. Kind of big. Everybody was big on him in the Debbie circles early on, and then never kind of got all the, never was the man at Texas. So it's going to be interesting to see kind of where the NFL looks at him, because I think this guy's got a lot of talent. Obviously, we saw the 40 time at the combine, 4.29, just freaking ridiculous. I mean, absolutely ridiculous. So can he turn that into production at the NFL level, I think is the big question right now.
Yeah.
You got Crispy in the chat. Every day is a great day to talk tight ends. Amen, brother.
Yeah.
This is for Matthew Golden, played with Quinn Ewers. That's funny. And of course, coming in late to the show, Crispy says, do a lap, JT. So, do a lap, do a shot, however you want to play it. We'll get this thing going. All right, Aiden, what do you got for us on Matthew Golden?
So strengths and weaknesses. Again, this is what popped out to me initially on film over the last few days preparing for tonight's show. The 4.29 backs this up. Matthew Golden, it really stood out. He has elite straight line speed and explosiveness. He can stack DBs vertically. It stuck out to me in a very positive way. He's a true man beater. He beats man coverage immediately. He can stack DBs. He can get behind the defensive field, and he can separate at a very high level. His straight line speed and explosiveness is unmatched, and he can gear up real quickly. And he also knows when to gear down. But more importantly, he has the extra gear when he's out in the open field.
Nice. Yeah, you look at some of the advanced metrics here for Matthew Golden. One of the things you do like to see for these wide receivers who go down the field and try and get the ball, you like to look at their contested catches, 70% contested catches on 17 total targets. One of the things I look at whenever I'm trying to analyze a wide receiver is looking at how efficient they are. And so that starts, first and foremost with 3 yards per route run. Not particularly high, 1.67. I would like to think that, when he gets the ball in his hand, he's able to break away, or you see a lot of, yak or yards after the catch per reception. Not really there. So it's kind of one of those things where the quarterback he needs to be playing with kind of just drops it in the basket right at the right space and time for him to, pull in the deep passes or pull in those touchdowns. Is that a fair assessment, JT, or do you think there's more to his skill set that meets the eye? And that was not a Transformers reference. Technically that was a Transformers reference, not on purpose.
It works.
Yeah, we've seen some different things throughout the years, but it just, it hasn't been completely consistent. And I think that's where we've seen, the upside. We've seen the upside with him. We've seen what he possibly can do. We just haven't seen it for a whole season or a long period of time. So he's an interesting guy because all the things I've read about him, doing research on him, people are kind of up and down on him. Obviously, I think the 4.29, he really pushed him up a lot of people's draft boards, at least in the fantasy realm. How much will that translate to the NFL? I think it will. We know how the NFL is. They love freaking speed. They just love speed. So the 4.29, I think, is going to push him up. He is a little lower on my draft rankings than a few other guys, just because of that, of the inconsistency in colleges. Now, we had a comment earlier. Was it Quinn Ewers? Was it his problem that he couldn't get him the ball? The biggest knock on him is he's not great throwing the ball deep downfield. Is, Golden the guy that can beat guys deep downfield that just didn't get to see that in college because of his QB play? I think that's a possibility. He's a guy, depending on the landing spot, man, I think there's some super high upside for him. There's a couple guys I like better than him, but he's definitely a guy to keep an eye out on. I just think, the right landing spot could definitely push him up fantasy draft boards, because I think people could see the talent, and I think people will buy into the upside.
100%. Jamie in the chat here. Hey guys, what's going on, Jamie? Great to see you in the chat as always. Aiden, I'm sorry, did I cut you off? Were you about to say something or no?
I was just saying I agree with everything JT said. Great points.
Very nice, very nice. Let's get into our next wide receiver here. And this may be hot take-ish. Probably is going to be hot take-ish. Everybody likes to talk about, Tet McMillan. They like to talk about Emeka Egbuka. Great wide receivers. We'll talk about them, obviously, in today's episode. But a wide receiver that I'm actually becoming more and more of a fan of the more I look into his stats, and I'm sure you guys can speak to his film productivity, and that's Pat Bryant out of Illinois, 6'3", 200 pounds. Fourth-year wide receiver, had a career year in yards with 984, 10 touchdowns, playing 76.8% of the snaps out wide. Again, I like to look at the efficiency of being the route runner in terms of people in the Power 5, wide receivers in the Power 5. He ranks 12th in yards per route run. 5th in the Power 5, 12th overall amongst all wide receivers in the NCAA. In the Power 5, he's the wide receiver 18 in yards after the catch per reception, wide receiver 10 in contested catch percentage, 18 in missed tackles forced, wide receiver 17 in first downs, wide receiver 6 in quarterback rating when targeted with a score of 140.8. What really is impressive is he's in the top 12 in a lot of these metrics in man and in zone coverage, with zone coverage kind of being more of the better of the two. PFF has him graded as the 5th overall best wide receiver against zone, wide receiver 4 in yards per route run, wide receiver 7 in yards after the catch per reception. And again, wide receiver 1 quarterback rating when targeted. This guy seems like he's a great safety blanket and can do a lot of things, whether it's in zone versus man coverage, and that makes him versatile. And that's something that tells me that, okay, the more versatile you are, the more you can do. The more elusive you are, if he lands in the right spot, I mean, I guess that's true of any wide receiver, but he could really maximize his output and kind of maybe even push for some playing time this year down the stretch of the season, again, depending on where he lands. If he lands in a good situation, if he landed, I know this is going to be like an obvious Jorge situation, but if he landed in Kansas City with Patrick Mahomes, that would be
my God,
very scary, because the wide receiver position in Kansas City is barren is the word to use. Forgive me, Hollywood Brown truthers.
Desolate.
Desolate. Yes, I'm a very big fan of Pat Bryant's, and like I said, he's just every time I look at him, I'm like, man, there's just more and more to like about him. From a playing on the field perspective, Aiden, I know we didn't go over this too much in pre-show, but like I say, Pat Bryant, what thoughts immediately jump to your mind as far as him as a wide receiver?
So, did you mention his measurables? Sorry if you did. I just can't remember his height and weight.
Yeah, 6'3", 200.
Okay, that's what I thought watching all this college football. Immediate thing that Pat Bryant comes to mind when you bring him up to me. big physical red zone threat. And I think in the right system, it's like a wide receiver 4/5 that also plays special teams and makes his hay there. I think it could be a sneaky, really good red zone threat, as evidenced by the double-digit touchdowns this past year at Illinois. So I really like this. Like you said, over the last couple months, he's grown on me. I know this is a really, really deep sleeper down the list here, if you will, but I don't know, like mid to late day 3, I feel like someone's getting a steal. And again, first few words that come to mind, big physical red zone threat.
Brandon Hallam in the chat. Aren't all the Chiefs wide receivers busy sitting in front of a jury right now? Well, they could be. I know that they are in trouble. I don't know that they're technically in front of the jury, but I get your point. That is hilarious. Love it, Brandon. Welcome to the show. JT, Pat Bryant, you're an Illinois guy. You live in Illinois, and you've seen him.
You're going right into my wheelhouse here. Illini.
Yeah.
You see my Illini helmet right behind me here. Pat Bryant. What can I say about this guy? Now, Altmaier had a very nice season last year. He's really seen some uptick. The old Miss QB that transferred in, but Pat Bryant has done quite a bit of Illinois with not the best QB play. I mean, people have to realize he has performed every year with just very subpar offenses, and not only that, but offenses that have been like 75% ground and pound. Like Illinois wants to run the ball. Chase Brown was there. They gave him a million carries. I mean, this is guy sophomore year, 34 catches, 453 yards. Junior year, 43 catches, 560 yards, 7 touchdowns. And then last year, 54 for 984 and 10 touchdowns in a absolute run-first offense. I mean, those are really good numbers. This guy is a super talented player. Some of the strengths for him, he is really good at manipulating his leverage against defensive backs. You know, he really figures out where they're at, and then he uses it against them. He's really good at setting up the breaks and creating separation. So even if he's not necessarily the fastest guy in the world, he knows how to use his body. He knows how to use his leverage to create that separation in order to make the catches. Also, very natural receiver, really nice hands, soft hands, huge catch radius. Like, he's the type of guy, because he is not super fast, he's the type of guy that he knows how to run all the way through the route and then put his hands up at the absolute last second so he gets exactly where he needs to be as fast as he can and gets those hands up late and makes grabs. So I think he plays faster than he actually is, just because he knows his body. He knows his technique. He knows he's maybe not the most athletic guy in the world, but he uses technique to make up for that, which I love, especially at the next level. I mean, when you have elite athletes everywhere, can you use, your mind and your technique and your IQ to kind of set yourself apart? I think he's that type of guy. Now, does he come in immediately and make a fantasy impact as a rookie? Gonna be questionable. Really gonna end up depending on situation. But he's a guy that I would absolutely not be shocked in like 3 years where we're all talking about, like, how did he go that late in the draft and how did he go that late in fantasy? This guy should have been picked way earlier. I've done a bunch of mock drafts, and I'm telling you, I've done a ton of mock drafts where he didn't even go in the first 4 rounds in a mock. And I'm like, he's going to be a steal in the 4th or 5th round. I mean, I've been watching just because I haven't been taking him. Not that I wouldn't, to be honest with you. I just want to see if anybody else grabs him or how far he drops. He's a guy that right now, I want the hype train to get around him because I love him and I think he deserves it. But I also kind of want to keep it a secret because I want to grab him everywhere. I think he could easily slot in as a wide receiver 3 on a team this year with that upside that he could end up being a team's wide receiver 2. And like Aiden said earlier, wide receiver 2 with high touchdown upside because of the red zone type of target he can be. Is he ever going to be that guy who catches 120 passes a season? Probably not. But is he a guy that can get you 70, 75 catches, 1,000 yards, and like 8 TDs? I think he has that kind of upside. So really interesting because he's kind of lost in the mix in this draft class.
Yeah.
But I'm telling you what, right now, I think he right now, he just has so many guys in front of him in the draft that I like him so much better than. So it's going to be really interesting to see what his draft slot is. He's a guy right now I think people have going maybe late 4th, early 5th in the real NFL draft. I could see a team falling in love with him, and he's one of those surprise guys we see in like the mid to late 3rd round that no one saw coming. And if that happens, I think you're going to see his draft stock as far as fantasy value go way up.
Can I add something in quick? Just quick.
Yeah, go for it.
Like you mentioned, JT, while Pat Bryant isn't the most, athletically gifted, fastest guy in the world, so he's going to have to rely on his physicality and technician-like build and play style most of the time. But he already does that at a really high level, so there's no reason to think he can't. I just wanted to add that in there.
Yeah, he feels like a guy that is ready to come in and play and compete, because he competed at Illinois, really building up. He was a guy that, for Illinois at the time was a pretty high recruit. Nationally, he wasn't at all, because Illinois was pretty bad when he got to Illinois. But I tell you what, everyone at Illinois loved him. Everyone loved him. The media loved covering. All the fans loved him. Super nice guy, hard worker. There was never a single conversation about does he transfer. He was like, I'm an Illinois guy. I'm staying here. Yeah, so, I mean, he had loyalty. He knew he could have went somewhere else probably and got more targets and more touches in a more pass-happy offense in college. But, hey, he proved himself. The numbers he put up in an absolute run-first, defensive-minded team, if he would have went to a team, I'm just trying to, I know I'm belaboring the point, but if he would have went to a pass happy program, this guy puts up 75, 80 catches, 1,200 yards and 15 touchdowns this year.
Like an SEC school.
Absolutely. I mean, if he was, I mean, he had 54 for 984 and 10 touchdowns on a team that was absolutely run first, pound the rock until we have to throw. And not only that, he made huge play after huge play when they absolutely needed it at the end of the games. He made a monster play against Rutgers where he caught the ball and scored. I think it was a 45 or 50 yarder with like 14 seconds left, where he caught a pass across the middle, juked 2 guys, got to the outside and outran everybody for the winning touchdown with 10, 12 seconds left in the game. And if he catches and gets tackled right where he catches it, the game's over and they lose. He makes the guy miss, gets outside, gets all the way around. I just think he's a gamer. He's one of those guys that the metrics are nice. He, good size, decent ability for what he has, but I just think he's a better overall football player than maybe you see in just straight down the board analytics and metrics.
I totally agree.
Love it. Love it. Good to know that I'm not completely crazy when selecting wide receivers to talk about.
No, you got it.
Let's switch over. Let's go a little bit back and forth. Let's talk some tight ends. Let's talk some wide receivers. Let's go to the tight end position now. And going back to Aiden, tell me if you heard this. Tyler Warren is really good at football.
What?
Shocker, right? The tight end out of Penn State. Tell us a little bit about Tyler Warren here, Aiden. What are your thoughts on him besides, really, really, really good?
So I always like to provide context and surface level measurables first. So he's 6'6", 256. That's more than enough prototypical size, especially for no knock at Brock Bowers, but he was an undersized tight end relative to other ones. Especially tight ends these days are coming in as more like slot, hybrid, kind of undersized guys. So a big burly 6'6", 260, 256, somewhere in there like this. The biggest thing on Tyler Warren I have written down, he can literally line up everywhere. Last year at Penn State, he took reps from the slot, out wide, in the backfield, jet sweeps, bubble screens, you name it, and most notably as a wildcat quarterback on certain design and runs and plays for him. He had almost 300 rushing yards and 4 rushing touchdowns at Penn State last year in 2024 as a tight end. This guy's a true mismatch nightmare no matter where you line him up on the field. And once he gets the ball, he's a yak monster. He's surprisingly fluid and elusive and bendy for his size. He has elite ball tracking skills, and body control. If you're a DB and you can't stack him vertically, too bad, game over. Because once Tyler Warren decides that there's a ball in the air that he wants, he's going to go up and get it. He has that my ball mentality. No one's going to rip this away from me. So that's what I got. I know I went a little in depth there, but that's just the stuff that stuck out to me.
Going into a little bit of his advanced metrics here, number 2 amongst all tight ends in the Power 5 conferences in yards per route run. So super efficient, in the top 12 in yards after the catch per reception, to your point. Passer rating when targeted, number 10 overall in the Power 5, contested catch percentage, 66%. Just, these are the metrics you want, played, 46% of his, 46.7% of his snaps in the slot. So definitely somebody that you want to obviously throw the ball to and to target in your rookie drafts. What really blows my mind here, though, is his missed tackles forced. This guy's elusive, like you were saying. 15 missed tackles forced in 2024. You go to his metrics versus scheme per PFF, the number 1 graded tight end in this draft class versus man coverage.
Yes.
You would like to say, well, it's mostly zone defenses nowadays. How often does man coverage really mean a lot? Well, think about this for a tight end position. You normally either have a strong safety or a linebacker in coverage of these tight ends, and this guy is just, whoever's guarding him is just blowing them away. Again, number 1 in yards per route run. He's in the top 12 in terms of yards after the catch per reception. Contested catch percentage right there at 77.8%. Quarterback rating when targeted, and the number 5 overall. I mean, this guy is as sure as it can get. You mentioned Brock Bowers, and I saw somebody, I don't know whether it was on X or on Blue Sky, had the balls. I don't know if there's any way else
No
to
way.
put it.
I know what you're going to say.
Had the balls to say better than Brock Bowers, and I immediately stopped what I was doing. I went back, I looked at all the metrics.
Can't get there.
Looked at all the metrics. I just, crazy, right?
I love Tyler Warren, but come on.
He's not Brock Bowers. But that being said, he's pretty damn good and pretty damn reliable. JT, what are your thoughts on Tyler Warren?
I know I've gone long on the first 2 guys, so I'm going to try to speed through him a little faster. I like the matchup. Matchup is, he's a matchup nightmare. The linebackers are never going to stay with him. He's fast enough to beat safeties at, what is expected as a 4.68 40. Great size. A guy still learning position, former quarterback, like we said. The biggest knock on him I've seen from people is like, oh, he didn't really perform till his senior year. Well, they've been loaded at tight end at Penn State. He's been playing behind nonstop NFL players, high draft picks. I'm not worried about the 1-year wonder from him. The fact is,
I'm not either.
All anyone's ever done is ripped about how terrible Penn State's offense is, and somehow this guy damn near sets almost every tight end record. And what is considered what most people say a bad offense. Like, to me, I'm fine with him. He's an older prospect. Yes, that bothers me not at all when you're a tight end. That just tells me he's ready to play now. He's ready to go. We don't have to wait on the 3-year tight ends that we usually have to do 2 to 3 years before they kind of break out. I think he's got it ready now. The biggest thing that's going to disappoint people and hurt him is that he's not Brock Bowers. I like him a ton. I think he's going to be really good. If people are drafting him expecting that he's going to put up Brock Bowers numbers year 1, don't do it. Don't do it to yourself. And again, I was all over Brock Bowers last year. I told people like he was, I think, the greatest college tight end I'd ever seen. I'm like, this guy is like legit good, and he's ready to come in and be
from the minute he stepped on the field.
Yeah, I was like, he's ready to come in and be a beast in the NFL. And we saw him on a pretty terrible Raiders team with very poor quarterback play, basically break every tight end number in the league. So he's not the same type of player Brock Bowers is. Bowers is more of an outside guy. He's a speed demon. He just is. I mean, Bowers is just another level of a different type of player. I don't think Tyler Warren's that type of guy. Now, that's not knocking Tyler Warren. I still think he comes in right now. He's probably a top 10 dynasty asset for tight ends. And depending where he gets drafted and where he goes, I think he's going to move up on that by the time we start the season. I think he's going to be really good. I think he's going to have a good season. Big mark with Warren is he going to get drafted by a team that has an offensive coordinator smart enough and crazy enough to do everything they can to get him involved and do all kinds of stuff with him. That's my thing with him, because I think he's going to be good no matter what. His numbers fantasy-wise are going to depend on what kind of offensive coordinator he has. So that's my biggest thing there. If he's on a team where somebody is really, innovative and can get him different touches and carries and things in a different light, I like it. I think he's like, and this is a lot for me to say this because you know how I love him. Pat Freiermuth is one of my favorite guys. I think he's one of the most underrated tight ends in the league.
Oh yeah.
I think he is super power Pat Freiermuth. So I like Muth a lot. I think he's like that next step up, like bigger, faster, more elusive than Freiermuth. So to me, people that know me saying that as a Steelers fan and know how much I like Muth, that tells you how much I like Tyler Warren.
I see some George Kittle in him, at least in terms of yards after the catch ability.
Mm-hmm. I think the yards after the catch, blocking ability, and just overall strength, I think he's more of a Kittle type that way. I agree with you. Receiving wise, I think he's a good mix between a Kittle and a Freiermuth. I really do.
I agree.
Let's get into our next. Let's go back to wide receiver. Got Hollywood Titan in the chat. What is up, Hollywood? Next wide receiver that I'm just, again, falling in love with, and it's kind of hard not to. It's Trey Harris out of Ole Miss, 6'3", 210 pounds, had the past 2 seasons at Ole Miss in the Power 5 last year, Power 5 conferences. Number 1 in yards per route run with 5.12. The next highest wide receiver in the Power 5 had a yards per route run of 3 point something. So clearly, far and away, one of the most efficient route runners in all the Power 5. Number 1 in average depth of target with 12 yards. Number 1 in contested catch percentage with 61.5%. Wide receiver 2 overall in quarterback rating when targeted. Again, we talk about efficiency. We talk about how he's being played versus scheme. Yards per route run, efficiency metric. Number 1 versus man coverage. Number 1 versus zone coverage. I mean, going over to, what is it, NFL mock draft database, they have Trey Harris as the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I could make the case that he could be a top 3 wide receiver just based off his efficiency metrics and productivity alone. Is that a little bit too high for you there, JT?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not for me. He's actually my wide receiver 4 in this class, but I think he's a guy that when we go back and look at this draft class, there's a good chance we say, like, why did we underrate him as much as we did? I'm real familiar with Trey Harris. I've had Trey Harris on a couple C2C teams for like 3 years. Like, I love Trey Harris. I had Trey Harris when he was at Louisiana Tech. When he went to Ole Miss, I told people on Twitter and like people that are in the Devy C2C world, I said, this is going to be super interesting. I said, if he can crush at Ole Miss, I was like, I think he's good enough. Like, he was awesome at Louisiana Tech. Again, we're talking about back-to-back former quarterbacks. Trey Harris, exactly like Tyler Warren, was a quarterback, moved to wide receiver. This guy has just worked his way to the top, just like Tyler Warren had to work his way to the top. When he went to Ole Miss, I was like, this is going to be the make or break. Can he produce at an SEC school and show what he did at Louisiana Tech? Didn't miss a beat. Went to Ole Miss, looked great. I tell you what, right now, I think we're talking about him possibly being wide receiver 1 or 2 if he doesn't get hurt at Ole Miss this year. I really do. The numbers he was putting up were astronomical this season before he went down with a growing injury. In his 8 games, he was absolutely lighting the world on fire. I mean, this guy was over 1,000 yards in 8 games, double-digit touchdowns. you saw their offense when he got hurt. Jackson Dart's numbers definitely dipped a little bit. Now, he had a couple big games without him, but he also had some games that were not very good when he got hurt right off the bat. And there's some players that had some monster games when Harris was out. If Harris did not get hurt this year, I'm telling you, he could have been easily approaching 100 catches, 1,800 yards, and 20 touchdowns. I mean, he really could have. I mean, the numbers would have been on the charts. I still think he's underrated. If he goes top of the second, I just don't understand how he goes any later than mid-second round in the NFL draft. If he goes top of the second round, oh, man, it's going to be so hard not to take him in the first round of fantasy drafts for me. Anywhere I've been getting in the second round currently, I am just stoked about it. I just think if you can get him in the top of the second round, I think you're stealing right now. Trey Harris is going to be a name I think a lot of people are going to look back at and go, I blew that. I should have been bigger on Trey Harris. I should have been paying attention to him more. The 40 time, I'll finish with this. The 40 time 4.54. I know some people said they were disappointed in that. I was like, boom, I'm in. I thought if he ran anything under a 4.6, I was going to be pumped. He's a tall guy. He knows how to create separation. He plays way faster than that. You could see him burn guys in college all the time. And you're like, he's burning guys like he runs way faster than that. I was not worried about that time at all. I was like, if he's under anything under 4.58, I'm golden. So I was pumped with that. Super underrated. Trey Harris, one of my favorite guys right now, wide receiver 4 to me. And if he moved up people's boards, I would not be shocked if he went late first round, early second round. I just think he's one of those guys a lot of NFL teams are going to want. Jorge, you're muted.
Yeah, I think you're muted.
I was going to say, Aiden, anything to add? And then rookie mistake.
I was nervous for this. It looks like I have to be the downer for this show because I'm someone, sorry guys, but I'm someone who thinks Trey Harris is a bit overrated right now, at least relative to his hype. Now, I still have a few more wide receivers to get through over the next few weeks, but I will say right now, you said JT is your wide receiver 4, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. Right now, depending on the day, relatively, he's wide receiver 8 through 10, somewhere in there. I just don't see on film. He's not the savviest route runner. Now, like I said, JT, like you mentioned, he ran a 4.54 40. I think he plays up. I think he plays better than that speed. Like, I think his in-game speed is better than his official 40 time speed, if that makes sense. So we'll give him props there. But I just think relative to the hype right now, I might come around at him. But currently right now, I think he's a bit overrated. So I think late first round in the NFL draft is kind of just like blasphemy. And I don't get it whatsoever. I think to me, he's a more late second round, even early third. That might sound harsh, but that's just where I'm at right now.
Well, since you're at the microphone right now, and the microphone is yours, why don't you talk about a tight end and Elijah Arroyo?
Yeah. Do you want to introduce this guy's measurables quick while I get to my notes on him?
Sure. Give me 1 second. Let me pull that up here. So Elijah Arroyo, University of Miami tight end, 6'4", 245 pounds. Crazy. Jesus Christ. I didn't realize he was that big.
He's a big dude. He's a big athletic dude.
50% of the snaps in the slot. Again, averaged up the target 9.1 yards. So he's one of those guys that he'll catch the ball, he'll convert the first downs. But you look at his yards per route run, he's definitely the anti, so to speak, Tyler Warren, and the fact that he's not that elusive. He doesn't get that many yards after the catch. But he's placed in a position to, which I find really interesting. He didn't really have any contested targets or any contested catches. But he is a sure-handed receiver when he catches the ball, having a quarterback passer rating when targeted of 137.5. Aiden, you good now for Elijah Arroyo?
Yeah. I want to start with this. You alluded to it just now, I think. Elijah Arroyo, like off the charts athleticism, like uber athlete here. The metrics back it up. He's a very good route runner. Now, not all his route stems are the prettiest or most perfect, but I think he has the tools and size and prototypical assets you're looking for in a tight end to develop in those areas, if that makes sense. I think he has elite ball skills. He's going to pluck a ball in the air and go down. Now, Jorge, you mentioned he's not going to provide much after the catch, but that's okay because he has very reliable hands, get you an easy first down. And again, he can line up anywhere. Not like the versatility of Tyler Warren, but in terms of like tight end / wide receiver, he can line up out wide, slot, inline. My only weakness for him is unfortunately, he has a pretty significant injury history. The torn ACL basically cost him both of 2022 and then 2023 while recovering. And also 2024, he had a great year, but he kind of has a modest production profile, if that makes sense. Like compared to other tight ends in this class, not really that productive at the college level. JT, those points make sense I just laid out.
Yeah, absolutely. Arroyo, like you said, he's an elite athlete. Guy was an absolutely coveted high school recruit out of Texas.
Yes.
The biggest thing we're dealing with him is, like you said, the red flag, the injury history. He's basically played 1 year of college football. It just is. I mean, his freshman year played 12 games, but only had 5 catches. Then basically missed multiple back-to-back seasons. Played 5 games, played 6 games, had 6 catches combined. I mean, just really, really struggled to get on the field. This is a guy where if he could have went back to school and really produced this next year, this guy could have been flying up draft boards. I think he would have been a clear-cut second-round pick for sure next year. It's going to be interesting to see, because of that medical history, where he goes, but he does have all the athletic traits you want in the NFL as a tight end. I mean, he really does. Got nice hands. And again, here's the thing. Has he been able to really break away from people, break tackles, do stuff like that, make play? No. But is that also partly because he's just been hurt? He hasn't had a chance to play. Miami threw the ball all over the place this year. He wasn't their number one guy. They had wide receivers all over the place. I mean, to be honest with you. Yes. So he had a nice season. And I always try to warn people this. It's hard to say because the tight end production in college the last couple of years has been ungodly. Like something we've never ever seen before at the college level. So he had a very, very productive college season with 35 catches. I think it was he had 35 catches, 590 yards and 7 touchdowns in 13 games. That is a super productive season for a college tight end. The problem is when you mark him up to like what Brock Bowers and Tyler Warren have done with like 100 catches and like 800 to 1,000 yards, 1,200 yards, it just looks minute. But in real perspective, 590 yards and 7 touchdowns is a fantastic college season for a tight end. Tight ends just are not usually the top guys. They're in college offenses. That's just not the way it works. They just don't work those guys in as their top guys most of the time, unless you're a Brock Bowers. When you come in and they're like, holy crap, this guy is way better than we thought he would. And he was their number one guy as a freshman. So I think Arroyo, he's going to be a steal to me.
I agree. I
think he's going to come in and I think he might struggle early, like his rookie year, just because he's only really had that one full healthy year. I think it might take him a year to adjust. But I tell you what, if you got some space where you can draft this guy and he falls in your draft, man, I would be snagging him up and holding on to him because he's a guy I think could be uber productive in the NFL in the next 2-3 years, especially if you're in like a high tight end premium league or a start 2 tight end league. This is a guy I would stag now because I think you'll never get him cheaper than you're going to get him now. I think his value is just going to rise and rise because I think he's just going to get better and better.
He's easily my tight end 3 right now, by the way, in this class.
I love this tight end class, which is like, I feel like I've said this like multiple years in a row because I really like the last couple of tight end classes. He is not my tight end 3, and that's only because I like guys better. Here's the deal with me. I have 2 tight ends in this class that if they would have went back to school, they would have been my tight end 1 and 2 next year. And that's Mason Taylor and Elijah Arroyo. If they would have went back to school, I would have had them ranked in my college rankings. Mason Taylor tight end 1, Elijah Arroyo tight end 2, with a first to early second round ranking on both those guys. They just happen to come out in a year with a lot of really good tight ends. Right now, Arroyo for me is right at my tight end 4 or 5. He's right in that range. So I still really like him, though, because I love this tight end class. So even at tight end 5, it's not like I don't like him, because I really, really like a lot of guys in this class.
Tight end 5, especially in this class, that's pretty impressive. So
yeah, and like I said, he would be like John McGlynn says he's his tight end 2. John McGlynn loves him. He would have been my tight end 2 preseason, heading into college season, into the draft next year. Mason Taylor would have been 1 and he would have been 2. They currently are my tight end 3 and 4 in this class. Fannin has dropped a little bit for me. I kind of like Arroyo better. I've always been Mason. I love Mason Taylor, so he's number 3 for me. Arroyo was 5. He's jumping Fannin for me just because I feel like the long-term upside is Arroyo's higher. So I've got him at 4. And I've dropped Fannin just
yeah, because I'm afraid Fannin is just a gimmicky guy too, more than a real tight end, unfortunately. Like Jaheim Bell in the NFL. But
all right, let's get to some of these wide receivers now. We're running a little bit low on time here, so we'll kind of cruise to these guys, because you've heard the names, you've heard them, you've seen the mock drafts, you've heard the hype, and let's start off with Ted McMillan, Arizona, 6'5", 212 pounds. Led the Power 5 in receiving yards with 1,316. Played 78% of his snaps out wide. Wide receiver 4 in the Power 5 in yards per route run. Wide receiver 1 in contested catch amongst wide receivers with 30 or more contested targets. Can you imagine that, having 30 contested targets? Like, that is crazy.
No big deal.
Wide receiver 1 just is even crazier. Wide receiver 2 in missed tackles forced. Now, here's the thing. Here you have an outside wide receiver who's elusive. The person who's wide receiver 1, who we'll also talk about, Luther Burden III, who's a slot wide receiver, who you figure would be a little bit more elusive than an outside wide receiver, is, but not by much. Luther Burden, 30 missed tackles forced. Ted McMillan, 29. Dude is insane. Versus man coverage, wide receiver 5 in yards per out run. Solid plus 100 quarterback rating. Versus zone, he excels at contested catches. Wide receiver 4 in yards per out run. Wide receiver 3 in missed tackles forced. I mean, what can this guy not do, JT? I know there is some pushback, from Ted McMillan being a wide receiver 1 or being the wide receiver 1 in the NFL, but for fantasy purposes, where do you have him ranked?
Yeah, so he started off as my wide receiver 1, and then he's right now currently says as my wide receiver 2. My absolute love for Luther Burden has just shown through. So he's my number 1. But I like Ted McMillan a ton. I knew this was going to happen because I was like, he's so good. But like, as soon as we get into like the actual draft time of year, people are going to start picking him apart, and people are going to be like, oh, he needs to drop. He needs to be bad. Because if you would have talked 2 months ago, he was a top 10 pick. Now people are like, oh, should he go in the top 20? Should he be a late first rounder? Somebody is going to get a steal on him. If he drops to the 20s, somebody's going to be absolutely ecstatic. I just think Ted is really good, man. He's a mix of a lot of players. This Arizona team last year struggled. They struggled. I mean, he was literally their only guy. The year before, he had Jacob Cowing, who did really nice underneath work, kind of opened things up for him. This year, teams were all over him. He still had a couple monster games. He had a 300-yard game, 2 200-yard games. I mean, with team, and he was like literally the guy that everybody was on. I just think he's underrated. I'm loving it. I'm buying the dip if there is a big dip. I don't know what the dip is. Is the dip like 1-2 to now he's like 1-4 or 5 in fantasy? I think there might be a little bit of dip, but I don't think it's much. I like him a ton. Unless even if he ends up in a bad landing spot, like where I just don't like the quarterback or the team, he's still, I think, is a top 5 worthy pick in fantasy, depending on your system. But I like him. I'm not buying all the hate. I know this time of year, whenever you're the number one guy, people want to start picking at you. The same thing with Marvin Harrison last year. Everybody want to start picking at him because he was the number one guy all season. Everybody was talking about Ted all season. And to me, I'm not buying. I think he's a number one. I think he probably comes in and takes a year or two to really bust out in the NFL, to be honest with you. I think he starts as a wide receiver 2 in the NFL, fantasy wise, for a team. And then I think he's definitely a guy that I think is going to hit his stride and is going to eventually be that top 12 guy for you in fantasy.
Hayden, real quick, what are your thoughts on Ted McMillan?
So JT mentioned it. This time of year, there's prospect fatigue. And everyone wants to pick apart this and that and blah, blah. Ted McMillan, he's my wide receiver 1 in this class currently. Always has been. He always will be up until he's drafted. Top 10 pick, whatever. He's in a tier of his own. I absolutely am in love. He is a monster in the contested catch situations. When he wants that ball, he's going up and getting it. And like, they don't make 6'4", 200-something-pound receivers anymore. Like, they don't make DK Metcalfs or Ted McMillans anymore. You're seeing more shifty, smaller slot, inside-out versatility guys. Like, this is rare height, weight, speed combo, in my opinion. Guys that are 6'4", 200-something pounds like Tet is shouldn't be able to move as fluidly as he does, but somehow he does it. So that's just my quick synopsis on him.
All right, let's get into, I mentioned him earlier, Luther Burden III, 5'11", 208 pounds. He had a bit of a down year compared to his 2023 stats in 2024, primarily a slot wide receiver. That being the case, wide receiver 24 in yards per route run, wide receiver 1 in missed tackles for us. I was just referencing that with Ted McMillan. Wide receiver 28 and quarterback rating when targeted. But, you like to see some of these metrics here versus man coverage in the top 16 in yards per route run and then yards after the catch per reception versus zone. A little bit more to be desired in yards per route run with wide receiver 25 overall in the Power 5, wide receiver 40 in yards after the catch per reception. You like the missed tackles for us, though, with 11, and wide receiver 15 when targeted by a quarterback. Let's again, and I wanted to preface this when we talk about all these players, we're talking about this from a fantasy perspective, not from necessarily NFL scout perspective. I do not proclaim to be an NFL scout. I just know numbers. I know fantasy, and I know fantasy football has numbers. Therefore, you put 2 and 2 together, you're able to find some trends there. That being the case, JT, really quickly, why is he your wide receiver 1 for fantasy?
Yeah, Burden, I just think, people are down on because of the bad year last year. It wasn't a terrible year. Everybody's like, hey, they're manufacturing him touches at Missouri. Well, they had to. Their quarterback's arm was hurt. Like, he couldn't get the ball downfield. They were doing everything they could to get him the ball and touches because their offense just was out of rhythm all season. When their offense produced and their offense looked good was a sophomore year. 86 catches, 1,200 yards, 9 touchdowns on a team that went to the Cotton Bowl and won the Cotton Bowl. You can't forget those numbers. And also as a true freshman, 45 catches, 375 yards, 6 touchdowns in the SEC with a first-year starting quarterback. Those are great freshman numbers. Don't get it wrong. He was the number 1 wide receiver in the country coming out of high school for a reason. The guy's an absolute stud. He's an athlete. He's going to be great in the NFL. 4.41 at the combine sealed the deal for me. When he ran that fast at the combine, I thought he would be fast. I actually bet on him to go under 4.41. So when he hit 4.41 and pushed, I loved it. He's going to be a steal. Everybody thinks he can only manufacture short yardage. If you watch the sophomore year tape, he burns guys deep downfield. He does a little bit of everything. And the guy might end up being the most dangerous player in the NFL with the ball in his hands when it's all said and done. The guy just makes people miss. He's unbelievable in the open field. To me, the upside for him is the highest ceiling. That's why he's my wide receiver 1.
All right, let's get to our last wide receiver that we'll be talking about today. It'd be criminal to not mention out of Ohio State, Emeka Egbuka, 6'1", 205, played 80% of the snaps in the slot in 2024. Wide receiver 11 in yards per route run in the Power 5. Wide receiver 24 by quarterback rating when targeted. here's where things get really, really interesting. Again, zone coverage, everything is defensively mostly zone these days. You have to, sit in the right holes all over the field, have the quarterback find you, drive the ball, so on and so forth. I get it. But, there are still a lot of shutdown corners in the NFL. There's still a lot of man coverages that go on. Wide receiver 5 for PFF against man coverage. Wide receiver 9 in yards per outrun in terms of efficiency. Quarterback rating when targeted versus man coverage, 153.6. That is near close to a perfect NFL passer rating when targeted. And this guy just tears it up from the slot. Wouldn't you say there, Aiden?
Yeah. This guy does. 5 years at Ohio State. That's incredible in its own right. But also, this guy, Mecca Buka, if you need a premier slot receiver, this is your guy. He does the down to down stuff like it's supposed to. He does all the gritty stuff, if you will. He blocks his butt off. He's just incredible. Maybe he doesn't have the fastest downfield juice in the world, but I think he has some pretty underrated yak ability, some yards after the catch creation style things. And I think he sneakily has really fluid hips and really fluid route stems and all that. I just personally love Emeka Buka. He's currently my wide receiver 3/4, depending on the day with Luther Bird and flip flop. But I'm sure JT would agree with me. Watching him watch a ton of college football like we do. All 5 years, just Emeka Buka produced right away at Ohio State. Yes, he's an older prospect. Yes, he has some injury issues, but the age thing is a concern. If you could look past the injury stuff, I think this is a gritty dude that is a great culture fit for any team that needs a premier slot guy.
JT?
Yeah, absolutely. Love Abuka. Right now, he's my wide receiver 3 in this class. And I think he's right with those other guys. I could see people taking Abuka over those other guys, depending on what they want on their team and their team needs. Don't fall asleep on Abuka, man. This guy had a monster year with CJ Stroud. I know they've had a million other guys at Ohio State the last couple of years that were awesome. He was awesome too. So do not forget about him.
If he goes late first round, I wouldn't bat an eye. I have no problem.
Oh, that's a steal. It's a steal. If he goes late first round and you can get him somewhere in the top 10 picks in your fantasy draft, you're loving life.
Well, I'm talking about real NFL draft even.
Yeah, I think real NFL draft. If he does not go in the first round, I'll be shocked.
Yeah, me too.
I'll be shocked. The fact that he's been kind of falling in drafts and Luther Burden also has been wild. I guarantee the real NFL scouts, if they both go early second round, real NFL scouts are going to be losing their mind. You're going to see people jumping around draft night being like, I can't believe we got this guy in the second round. They're going to lose their mind.
Abuka's the type of culture guy that scouts should love. So
absolutely.
All right, folks. Well, that wraps up, I believe, part 1 of wide receivers and tight end talk. Obviously, there's a lot more at this wide receiver class, and we could talk about some more tight ends. And I think the three of us can honestly say, while we covered a lot of these players today, there's still. We would be doing you a disservice if we didn't go further down the list and talk about these wide receivers. So we'll be back next week with part 2 in terms of evaluating the wide receiver and tight end position in terms of rookie prospects. Before we get out of here, though, Aiden, anything you want to tell the folks that you're working on or doing or anything fun in general?
Yeah, so I want to promote that later this week, within the next couple of days, I'm going to be releasing my first big long-form article here at Fantasy and Frames. I'm very excited, highlighting 8 must-have fantasy players from a fantasy football perspective, basically for 2025, basically players that you should be trying to draft everywhere and players that you should not leave draft without for one reason or another. I will be on 4th and Frames, of course, with Drew and Nate later tonight. And appreciate you guys for letting me join Dynasty 365 every Wednesday going forward. I love talking rookies. So, yeah, it's awesome.
Absolutely. What about you, JT?
Just hammering out the rankings. I'm doing my deving rankings, my college stuff. I'm doing my rookie rankings, getting as many mocks as I can, kind of checking these things out, seeing where guys are going. And then obviously IDP. We got it coming up here. I've been doing all my IDP stuff, so getting pumped for Shoot the Gap and our special guest we have on tonight.
I may or may not have asked Jorge about IDP the other day. So,
yeah, he literally is in our Discord chat, in our private Fantasy and Frames chat. Hey, I need to learn more about IDP. I hear it's fun. Anybody can teach me, so on and so forth. And I'm just like, yes, I've been waiting for this forever. So, folks, I'll be putting out IDP article over the weekend regarding NFL free agency and just what my thoughts are for the fallout there. Rapid reactions at the various positions. You can check out my Dynasty rankings and Drew Scott's Dynasty rankings over at fantasyandframes.com. Head over to fantasyandframes.com. Check out all of our article work. Just a lot of people were, just like NFL teams are reloading their rosters. We have a bunch of brand new content creators, many of whom you've heard about and have encountered in the fantasy space if you're active on Twitter/X. So a lot of announcements coming your way. We got a lot of people who love it here at Fantasy and Frames, and we can't help but just to say thank you for everybody who's supporting us here at FIF, and got a lot more coming your way. And like I said, next week we'll be talking about part 2 in evaluating wide receivers and tight ends in this 2025 rookie prospect class. So for Aiden, JT, I'm Jorge. Shoot the Gap is next. We'll see you next week.